online education platforms, and who better guide us through this than Mr. Balaji S R, the Chief Technology Officer, Learning Technology at NIIT Ltd. Mr. Balaji S R's expertise in building scalable online edtech platforms is second to none. Under his visionary leadership, NIIT has developed cutting-edge learning platforms that have set the benchmark for excellence in the industry. From the award-winning Global Distribution Academy to innovative solutions tailored for specific industries, Mr. Balaji and his team have been instrumental in shaping the future of online education. And today, he is here to share his insights in our NIIT Insights Session on building a scalable online edtech platform. So without further ado, let's give a warm welcome to Mr. Balaji S R.
So are you a little embarrassed by this big talk, Balaji?
Yeah.
So you guys don't drum up the thing. I mean, you're a good guy. I'm not saying you.
Thank you.
Our own folks
Thank you.
understand who is better.
Thank you, and happy to be here to share what we have at NIIT done in setting up this platform. And like she said, I mean, award-winning. Well, yes, it is award-winning. We have so far accumulated at least 300 awards just for the platform in the last 20 years. Okay? So I'm going to share how we actually built a platform like this, but I've kind of generalized the concept so that when you are thinking of a platform, some of you have already built the way I heard you have built your platform, but the platform is going to be there for long term. So how do you kind of set the foundation so that it scales as the businesses grow? And now with many things happening in technology and GenAI happening, the pace of change, I mean, you have to be faster than the pace of the change, and therefore you need to look at methods and techniques to make yourself ready for that change. So with that context, share this. Yeah. So while this is a generic statement, but this is the DNA with which we operate. In our team, each day, what we do is we actually have, it's like the sprint huddles that we have. Every team that gets into a huddle, each day they look at how do we or what do we do in our platform which makes it better. Okay, so every individual is actually tasked to do that. I mean, it just starts from the lower level, from the developer, the engineer, and actually to my level and including my manager, who's the chief digital officer. We connect and figure out what do we do each day into the platform which is better, which could be a customer experience item, or it could be just a performance item which saves the cost overall for us. So when you're thinking of a platform, it has to be designed in such a way that you are able to incrementally change each day without having to re-architect. Okay, it wasn't possible, I would say, about 15 years ago, but with the technology's advancement, it's now really possible, and we have been practicing it for last at least 15 years. Okay? So what we have done is we have set up a framework, and I mean, we call it a framework. It's a digital platform framework, which is the foundation. Okay, and I'll share with you how you can go about thinking of a foundation like that for your own platform. And it helps one grow your business, expand, also look at, and specifically in edtech, there is a lot of variations. There are seasonality. I mean, events like suddenly if you are, I mean, I heard about assessments. If you're actually setting up a platform for entrance exams, there'll be load only for that period of time, but the load will be lower. So how do you actually handle those spikes? So you create a foundation which allows you to handle such seasonalities. And also, more importantly, since you're all entrepreneurs, effectively use your funds to maximize your revenue and reduce the cost. So the other thing is, while your business also is going to change, the technology also changes. So how do you make sure that with the business change, you're also making sure that your platform is always ready. Some of you are working with B2B customers, and we are talking about technology with B2B customers. They always expect you are on the latest technology stack. So how do you make sure that you're always latest? And I heard somebody working with pharma. Pharma industry is more regulated. There is a lot more compliance and regulatory stuff. And then, I mean, every time they come up with new act. So how do you make yourself ready for that? That's an expectation, and it's an undocumented expectation. If you're going with a platform to such regulated industry, they expect that you have all those compliances. So you need to therefore have an approach where you're able to not just add feature, but also change the underlying technology without much effort and cost. So how do we go about doing that? So the first thing is, when you think about platform, irrespective of how you will get there, you just create the big picture. Big picture includes all the stakeholders you would be interacting with. For example, today you may not be actually having a partner ecosystem, but maybe when the business grows in future, you may have a partner ecosystem. So can you create a big picture where you're thinking of all the possibilities and think about what all you may need in future? Don't build them today, but at least have that big picture, or at least create placeholders for that big picture. That's the foundation we are talking about. And once that foundation is done, then you regularly evaluate all those stuff. And Raji in the earlier session said the main thing is focus on the main thing. So you look at the main things that you want to do and focus only on that. The rest you should let others do it. Or, I mean, there are examples, or you don't rebuild or reinvent what is already there. Pick and reuse them. Okay. So, and for the main things, the innovator, the differentiator, that you have uniqueness, you invest more time there, focus there, prototype, run that. Don't actually digress in building what is not your differentiator, that you can actually pick and adopt from anywhere else. Okay. Again, the big picture, these are examples, but the way we look at is, on the top, you look at customer experience. Just lay out what all experience you want to give to the customer today, tomorrow, and in future. Okay. Some things you may know, some things you may not know, but at least keep a vision for that. Then customer is the front end. That's where your customer, that's a customer touch point that happens. Then you will have your information system, which is back office. How do you manage your operations? You may be doing it manually, a few things today, but think of what could be automated in future if you want to. So that's the back end systems. Data and analytics. I mean, data is now with storage becoming not so expensive, and data becoming, as it said, data is the currency. Look at what all data you would want to store. Even if you think it's not useful today, store it. Secure, put it in the storage. Storage is not expensive. It may be useful in future. So therefore, again, when talking about the big picture, think of all these aspects. Start doing it right now. Even if you do not want to store it, at least provision for it, so that you don't have to come back and re-architect your framework. External ecosystems. You may be working with your customers, partners. There would be need to connect with their systems. So therefore, how do you actually build a system which is able to connect to those systems? Okay, and this is a challenge which many large enterprises have today. While they have set up their learning ecosystem, they're not able to now connect. And in fact, we are helping them do a few things around that. So this, I mean, if you look at these 5 dimensions, and there may be a 6th or 7th, depending on your own business, will help you actually create that big charter. Irrespective of whether you want to invest in that today or not, just create that big picture. And security and controls and regulations we spoke about, while it may not be relevant right now, it may be good to keep a watch on that and create specific layers for you to adopt or implement it later. in the future. So yeah, the focus is arrive at the big picture, create that landscape, not worrying about how you will do it. Don't worry about that. So that's how we actually created a vision. And each year we sit and we create a vision for the next 5 years or 3 years at least, so that we are able to enhance this framework over a period of time.
Sir, please move to the side.
Sure.
Thank you.
I mean, you may not be able to read it, it's not legible, but the idea here is this is our template. We created a template where we actually created all the dimensions of what we would want to have in our platform. And we created what are all the
Give an
feature
example.
functionality.
Just take any of those.
Yeah, so let me
box.
take something like this dimension is learner experience. Okay.
You have 1, 2, 3. First line is what? First line.
The first line is these are dimensions of what you would want to have in an any edtech platform. So this is like demand and discover in an L&D environment or any edtech environment. You would have the need to have systems or features platform that help you address learning demand. And if you are in a B2C, how do you help your customer discover what you are offering? And then you have engagement around it. So, I mean, some of these boxes, when we started, we actually put that as a box. We didn't build it. We built it later when we saw that there was a need. Then the second dimension is learning, design, and development. Uday spoke about what should be the approach on the learning design. So we created some of this, and I think one of this would say design strategy, which is our critical mistake that Uday was talking about. So how did we implement critical mistake? We actually put a box saying we will do this, but how we will do this was figured out later. How we did it was later.
As a case in point, the critical mistakes analysis is was the basis on which a Yale professor of learning of pedagogy or learning science or whatever.
Learning science. Yeah.
Roger Schenck created so he was at Yale with a number of PhDs. He moved to Northwestern in Chicago and created the Institute for Learning Sciences for the team. And then in the build up to the .com boom, he took it out as a company. It's called Cognitive Arts. And in the .com bust, the charges, the money he was charging the Walmarts of the world and McDonald's, he said, we can't pay you. And there was an investor who said, we have better reprice, and that didn't agree. I'm telling you a long story. It came off for sale, and we bought the deal. So Schenck, of course, left, but his researchers, our chief learning scientist is a guy from the team is still there in Chicago. So there, his full experience was around 2 dimensions. One was critical mistakes analysis, and second was immersive learning put together. That becomes a box.
Yeah.
So your architecture should be able to absorb these competencies. So for us, the first project was what, Singapore, ITE, or something before that? The first version?
Yeah, first version was IT. Yeah, not IT. It was Nanyang Polytechnic, 1999, 2000. Yeah.
So, as he said, now it's much easier to keep adding things in the architecture. And your cumulative, you have to keep putting your competencies into a structure. Sorry, I just wanted to mention what does the box mean?
Yeah. So, and some of these boxes, so we each, I would say each year we do a holistic review of these boxes, add new boxes to this. But every quarter we go back and look at each one of them and see if there is an improvement that we can do from various aspects. What the customer wants, what the businesses wants, any operational stuff. So we do that. And in the learner experience, for example, there is a learner, we have something called adoption and engagement. And this was created about 5 years ago. We just put that there will be some way for us to deal with how we make our learners or adoption of the learning content go up. Okay, we had put some ideas, but every year, and this is something in the last 2 years we are focusing the most in terms of making sure that there is more learner engagement, more adoption. So again, the idea is going back, create a framework that doesn't necessarily have to follow this format, but create that big picture and keep reviewing it so that you can actually build on top of it.
So we would also like to know what the orange and the yellow one are.
Okay, this is career success and lifelong learning. So in a typical learning cycle, you have the learning demand, then so you have people enrolled, then you put them through your pedagogy, they experience the learning, you also provide support to them. Once they have finished the learning cycle, then there is continuous learning. They are on the job, how do you help them, performance support, stuff like that. And these are the external ecosystem. So when you're connecting with your customer, how do your customers actually come in? If let's say if you have a B2B customer, while your end learner is the employee of that enterprise with whom you're working, but the stakeholder in that organization you're dealing with is your business stakeholder. So what all features you have for them is here, partner and all the stuff. Okay. In terms of the technical architecture, once you have the framework and you have defined what you want to do, you pick the boxes that you want to focus on, you build an architecture, and now with the advanced technology, now each of the box in the previous slide, each one of them are independent component. They will coexist and work in conjunction with the other box, but if you wanted to only deploy a single box for somebody, you should be able to do it. That's how each of these boxes have been architected.
Again, just as a context, Vijay talked about the entities we have. So last year, coming back to the question of going from B2B, B2C, we demerged our international business, which is largely B2B Fortune 1000 companies, which is learning process outsourcing business that we do, from what we are doing here and what we will do more and more here, which is much more digital, much more ethical. So now, if you look at the 83 customers we have and you look at which of these squares are applicable, in each case you'll have maybe 1/4 of them, right? Or what?
Yes, approximately 1/4.
Yeah. So each one will have the unique combination in that case there, right? Because they were actually configured and built back and then made into components and componentization of the whole thing. So when we demerged the entity last year, we called it NIIT Learning Systems Limited, NLSL, or MTS, Managed Training Services. That is listed, we demerged it last financial year. It's listed as a separate company. And the parent company therefore becomes, in a sense, what's left after we take this, right? So this entity, the NIIT Limited, the original company, now actually is going to be doing what the 2000 learning centers used to do in a modified form. Plus also deal with Indian corporates who are not at that level of doing, as we all know. Indian companies are just getting ready to have a strong L&D function. And I think we were talking about building a platform for small companies. So that is a evolution in the L&D function of large corporations. So small companies tend to do very little of organized learning. In fact, in India, the private sector versus public sector. Public sector has a far more developed and stable L&D structure because they have a budget. Private sector tends to shrink and increase. So multinationals, all of them, the large ones, where we chose to work with Fortune 1000, they have large established structure, but they don't outsource too much. So out of 1000, it's an underpenetrated market. So we kind of ended up, I would say, we didn't sit in the beginning and said we want to build this, as you rightly said. But one of the earliest projects which was large for us, was Singapore, the Institute of Technical Education, 20,000 students. And we built the system for them. And then went to the next customer. Then at some point we had to redesign the
Re-architect it.
Build flexibility. So wasn't the first cut, as he said. Took some years of work. And so therefore the India side of the business will use a smaller part of this. But it's the same underlying. So even though the two companies are separate, for something like the SAP and something we have common licenses but different instances. Same thing. And when you are looking at some of you have your platform, you may want to configure, but if you're looking for, there are many platforms available. Looking for this componentization is a good thought.
So with India, there was a report that when it comes to budgets, the first thing to go during cuts is L&D.
Advertising the first, training is second.
Second.
Or maybe training is first.
And this was Bloom's report that they recently.
But see, that to some extent happened globally. But I think there's certain fix that companies will have in the variations. Here, that fix is much lower and the variation can be larger. That's the thing. But the better companies don't have. The better managed companies will stick to talent building. And nowadays, talent is becoming more important, so the subject is becoming more important. But to your question about the mid-size, you made that point. I think that's a bigger challenge because they don't have, that function is not reporting into the CEO. It's reporting to either the IT manager or somewhere under training function. So that is where the crunch happens. That's where the inability to take a decision for a platform. You must be experienced about it. Okay, go ahead.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. So, like I said, each box, think of it as Lego blocks, which you can put together. And like Raji said, so our own business has used, and we have many customers who use 1/4 approximately. So we just kind of put those blocks together and create a unique solution for them. I mean, this is not something you can ignore. But when you're working with a cloud platform, use them wisely. Keep your options open. For example, there are certain things which AWS, not just only from the cost perspective, from the feature performance and the way the flexibility is provided, some are good with AWS. There are certain aspects which are good with Microsoft. Then there are others I've not listed. We also work with, let's say, IBM Watson. So specifically for the machine learning. So use and Google Cloud. So use them wisely and keep your architecture open to work with any of these or a combination of these. So today we have a combination of all three plus a few more. And then have the ability to go for an hybrid approach if needed. If you wanted to have your own data center, you should be able to do that. Certain aspects make sense when you have your own data center. And then don't shy away from, I mean, there is always this argument and debate that happens. I am always put across situations where people ask me and challenge me for this. Why do you have so many technologies? So many technologies would mean so many people knowing that technology. So, but this makes sense. In the past, we would actually approach a solution based on what capabilities we had. But we changed, the culture is changed. We look at the problem first, we look at what should we solve, and then we arrive at what technology are best suited for that. So that's the approach that we changed, and therefore having many technologies is not a problem. You will always find people, and you can always skill your own team for that. Yeah, this is something which I have experienced and learned through mistakes. So the critical mistakes. So we have learned through this. In the past, and like Raji said, the first project that we did, we actually went with some large-scale Sun microsystems, and we would do vertical scaling. And those days, system integration was a big thing, and we went ahead with that. But with cloud coming in and the seasonality that I spoke about, because we would have situations where suddenly, let's say, there is examination a week from now. Immediately, we will see the load pattern changing. Just before the exams, students would actually go and revisit the content, would like to learn. So that's when you will need to have more capacity. but then rest of the time it will be a lull period and you don't need that capacity. And sometimes the customer may decide, I want to ramp down, like enterprise, we spoke about budget cuts. Like, so what do we do? So if you had large servers, it's difficult to ramp down. Therefore, one of the approach we have taken, and consciously we do that even today, is we work with the smallest unit of compute, and then we scale it horizontally rather than going vertical. But again, it's a mix and match that we do. But largely, our approach is horizontal scale scale horizontally as much as possible rather than doing vertical, and do that carefully. And it does help in high scalability. Today, as of now, the platform that we would have approximately 500,000 active users. But in the past, over the last 15-20 years, we would have actually serviced good 10 million users across the customers we deal with. And it has all happened because of the horizontal scaling we did. With vertical scaling, we used to have challenges. Therefore, we switched to this mode. This is another mantra or philosophy that we follow: fail fast and retire fast. So again, referring back to the previous slide, don't shy from having a lot of technology. The other is build something fast and try it out as early as possible. Of course, I mean, you would not have a buggy system. I'm not saying that, but what I'm trying to say is, do not invest a lot in something new you're going to try. Just do a proof of concept, a prototype, and what's called as a minimum viable product, which can be tested. But if it doesn't work, I mean, don't worry in retiring it. You can always recreate it, and we have done that. And it works really well. It actually helps in wisely spending the funds that you have, specifically on the technologies. And I spoke about this. There are many things, specifically in that information system category. While you will set up, you would say, I would need a payroll system, I would need a CRM, I would need a back office system. Do not reinvent capabilities that can be easily sourced. Okay, there would be open source available or a low cost solution available. Plug that. So some of the boxes that you see here, they are not all boxes have not been built by us. Some boxes have been actually sourced from outside and we have plugged in, but we have integrated in such a way that it's seamless to the experience the end user gets. And again, focus to build capabilities that are your differentiator, because that's where you would be investing, and that's where you would be creating a differentiator for yourself. And another important thing, each of the boxes that you see, the boxes actually have smaller boxes within them in our actual framework. But each of the boxes that we define, and any spend that we do today, for each box we actually create the measure or the metrics for success in terms of business goals. So something like, if we are adding a feature to do something, we would actually link it to a business goal, saying this feature will actually improve or move the needle in terms of revenue by X% or something like that. Each feature is done that way, so that every investment that we do, we actually really know what is the business impact it is going to create. Okay? And we actually now are engaging with our customers. I mean, some of you who are working with enterprise customers, you would understand. When we're working with customers, we actually tell them that by implementing a feature like this, it's going to have an impact on your business. For example, the award that we have won for one of the insurance company, we have implemented a solution who uses this for sales training. There, the business goal that we worked with them was, by implementing a solution, they would be able to actually improve the average sales of salesperson by X%. So that's the kind of measure we do for each of the work, that for each of the box that you enhance or deploy or create a new box, or maybe even a small change in that box. Like I said, regularly revisit and review that template. I mean, we have a governance where we look at that template every quarter at least, and then once a year relook at that picture, the foundation, the framework, and we actually derive what more new boxes we need to have, or where the boxes needs to be actually more deeper features need to be added. We look at every year and we create a vision for the next 3 years, okay? Or at least or 5 years, whichever is possible. So that's the approach. And then I'm going to share some of the use cases, and I said in the start, make an incremental change every day, right? Now, some examples from what we do, and that's the culture we have set up in our teams. Things like, and being at, this is in the edtech, lots of activities, features that we will build tech, in a digital senses, all scheduled. Something like class starting at 9 a.m., okay, or a session or a webinar event happening at X so and so date, exams scheduled for so many students at 11 a.m. These are all predictable. That's good about edtech actually, therefore. So you can actually look at these kinds of events and you can do really smart things, which I will talk about in a short while. Then when does you would have variable load? You launched a new course, for example, Gen AI or something you launched, suddenly you will find there is load on your system. Now you can actually pre-plan. When you're doing a course launch, you can anticipate, predict the traffic or forecast the traffic, and then set up your environment such that it's able to take up that load. But you don't need a high capacity or a high compute all throughout the year. You can actually plan really well. That's good part of edtech. Like I said, week before the exam, we have seen this. This is a pattern. Week before the exam, we will see that the videos, recorded lectures are the most viewed. So therefore we know, okay, now caching needs to be enabled, or we actually pre-cache some of the videos depending on the exam schedule. Okay. This is another very specific to the learning ecosystem. Okay, login wait time can be generic, but let's say in an assessment, some of you are working on the assessment thing, and there is a lot of read time that happens. A student actually is reading, thinking, and have to take some action. We can be very, very smart and clever in how you architect your system so that it performs well and you can actually do it at a very, very low cost. Okay, I'll share some examples on how we have done. And okay, another important thing, this is every developer in our team only measures the response time in milliseconds. 1 second is slow for us. Okay. And this is, I'm talking about internet speed, not the server speed. So we don't talk in seconds, we always talk in milliseconds when we're having internal conversations. Now this is an example of something we're doing for a company called Josh Person. And this actually nothing new. And this is, I tell my team as well. I mean, there is no harm in shamelessly copying someone else who has done this before. And this is something we have copied from Google. If you have seen the Google login, they first ask you the email ID and then the password. That is not how it was earlier, but they changed it. But they actually, behind the scenes, what they're doing is, when you put the email ID, 80% of the time, the next step would be the right password. Only 20% would be exceptions when somebody has got a wrong password. But 80% of the chances is people are going to give you a right password and going to get into the system. Login is the most expensive in terms of data loading and authentication that happens. Because you generate, typically in any system, you generate what's called a dashboard. You'll have to bring all the stuff that the individual needs to know. So what we do is, the moment you put the email, by the time the person hits next and is thinking of the password or typing the password, behind the scenes, we have already cached what's needed for that particular user. So that the next page, one, the response time is fast. There is no loader going on. Two, you have also actually reduce the concurrency that will actually hit your database, and therefore you can actually work with a smaller size databases. So this is something we have done. And this is what we actually encourage each of our developers. And this is not something which I had designed or decided. It came from one of our developers who is fresh in the system and came up with this great idea. So we implemented it. Assessments. Many of you spoke about assessments. Now something we have done with assessments is, typically an assessment screen looks like this. There is a question and then there are options in an objective type. The learner is actually reading the question and then doing something. Now, there is this think time and the read time before the student can respond, depending on the type of the assessment. So what we do is, before somebody can hit next, we have actually preloaded the next few questions, at least 3 questions, so that you reduce the load on your servers. Therefore, you can run with the smallest set of servers. And more importantly, a system like this, Uday was talking about emotions in the entire learning process. If in an exam is a stressful event for the learner or the student, the candidate, if somebody hits next and then there is a loader going on, adds to the stress. So to avoid that, to give the best experience, you can actually use the think time to preload some of the questions. And when the next happens, it's like flash, immediate. So you actually address 2 problems with one idea. Now this is another thing, how you can optimize bandwidth. Now,
You have 15 minutes left.
yeah, I'll finish.
So if there's something important, just bring it forward, I think.
Okay.
Go
Yeah.
ahead. I just wanted you to do my
This one, learners, many of the applications now are mobile driven. People are on their data plan. Bandwidth for them, while we may create a good content and good material for them, but it's important for us to consider the bandwidth that they would have if you are addressing a large audience, specifically in the India segment. So how can you actually do a few things which helps your learner like your systems and always come back is save the bandwidth for them. Now what we have done, this is a PDF. In this example, it's 11-page PDF, but typically the content that we create could be 360-page PDF. So what and on this PDF, what we give is student the ability to mark up. They can do, take their notes and all of it. Typical implementation would be that every time somebody makes a change and hits the save button, you will push all of the data into your database. Right? That's a typical design that anybody would do. But what we have done is, on the browser, we find out what is the change that the student made. Only the change goes. So instead of 10 KB, you're only sending 1 KB, for example. Okay. So that's some of the things we have done. And this is just an example, but this principle applies all across. And this is something new. We have always spoken about streaming when it comes to videos, audio, and specifically, especially the learning content that we talk about. Now, with Gen AI happening, streaming of data is become given. You must have it, because AI is always thinking in parts, and it keeps sending you data streams, right? So therefore, you need to have a stream of data. Now what we have done is, with AI, we had to implement it mandatorily, because AI is only sending us the data in stream. Now, since we can do data streaming, we are trying to apply it across all the work that we are doing. See, let's say this is some text coming in. There is a learner who is reading this. You don't need to actually load the entire data. You wait and then load the remaining stuff in your next iteration. So this way, what is happening is, it's not just video and audio and rich media that you can stream. You can also stream data. Now that helps in, again, going back to the previous slide on conserve the bandwidth, and also you can actually conserve a lot of compute on your server side. Okay. With this, I will end my presentation.
Would you
Open
get
for
that for
questions.
questions? Because I think you did the same session both times.
Yes, this is.
So I just found that there are people who have platforms, for them it will mean something. Those who don't have platforms, I'm not too worried about bandwidth and so on because I don't have a platform. I mean, I will be technical. So I would suggest, since some of you have built platforms, for many people, no, not most, who have built a platform, one, everybody else. Sorry, take back the question.
So,
Well, some may have.
No, all I was trying to say that if someone, like, I think some of you are interested to have someone look at your platform.
yeah.
So please do that as well, because this has got, God knows, millions of man-years of work done. And therefore may not be the need that many of you have at this time. So see it as, okay, this is where you have to reach when you become 10x. That value it has.
No, but
So for everybody, that value it has, because everybody will have to move to this, your own, use something or whatever. So therefore, I think it gives a working idea, because this has, for us, has evolved. But then there was a point when we said, okay, now let's take stock and re-architect to take care of componentization and security and all of that. To that extent, whatever all of you are doing will be some relevant. But for those who are not into a hardcore platform, it could very well be that, I take the spirit of what Abhishek said about collaboration. You may find a better match or whatever. Should be kept in mind.
So is this platform available for other edtech companies?
See, let me say this. No, well, yes and no, meaning that we give it to our customers and we use it for ourselves. I think last time or the first time, some people were showing a lot of interest. So I told them to get in touch with him. And I think 6 months later, I asked him and he said nothing happened. So I'm not suggesting. Because frankly, it's, we're not geared up to support edtech companies around this, because you distract them from the next big customer who comes. So Philips had how many, 13 LMSs or what?
Yes, 13.
They moved on to our platform. Because when Vasily was doing the one Philips, worldwide, 175 countries, why do we have 13 LMSs? So they moved on. So for each customer, we had done something else. For Shell, which is one of our biggest customers, they have 400 training vendors.
Yes.
And after about 11, 15 years of work, they've told us, here's your key. This is what we spend on 400, you manage 400. So it's very different work. But none of our customers is an e-learning company. But I think there was a lot of curiosity, I don't know, first or second session. Second session. And we had said, be in touch with him. I asked him many months later, is nothing happened. So it's unlikely that that's the path to go. But I'm very happy that many of you are doing platforms. Okay? So if there's lessons for you, feel free to chat with him. For others,
more on framework, I think so.
And I have a couple of specific questions as well. One is, what is like a few counterintuitive user actions from clients, especially these clients? Like you thought something was important for them, but because of the user data that you have, you're like, okay, this is not, based on the templates that you've had. That's number one. And the second is that I want to understand the relationship within NIIT between the product team or the tech team and the learning design team. Who is taking the shots when it comes to deciding features? Like the features that you've discussed, a lot of these, where is the thinking happening? Is it happening in collaboration, or is it first being decided by, say, the learning team led by, say, Uday sir, and then does it come to you? I just want to understand that process as well.
Okay, so let me answer your question in the reverse order, the second one first. In terms of decision making, it is collaborative. However, technology is an enabler. Okay, so our job is to translate the ideas that the design team has into something which can be practically implemented. So that's what we strive to do. So therefore, there would be I wouldn't say there would be a situation where we'll say, hey, we are not implementing this idea. Okay. However, it has to be backed by that measures, metrics that we set. That's a collaborative effort because that's kind of our framework. I mean, they can't just, or design team cannot just say, I want this. There has to be a reason and a business impact to it. That's how we approach. Yeah, there has to be a business case for it.
So a new customer may shape the change. A new customer with new requirements may shape a change.
Yes, absolutely.
No, there
But
is
again-
a change which you make for a customer, and there is a change which you make which is now a standard feature on the platform. And typically, if I'm not guessing it wrong, the effort is 5x.
Right.
To make it a generic feature versus doing it specifically for a customer, because that is a, put a band-aid
Version one.
and it get going. But if you really want to make it a standard feature on the platform, then there is a 5x effort. Good news, what a new customer does is it opens your mind to a possibility.
Correct.
Right? You run with that, and then your other guys say, hey, my customer also wanted something like this. Then you discuss, then that is the collaborative effort, say how much will it cost, what can we possibly get for it, right? And we are a public company, so we are accountable for every every rupee that we spend. So then there is a business case created for it. Right?
So one lesson is that the longevity of your team is the biggest enabler for collaboration. So guys they have on your platform, you better make sure. Too much is in their head. So our guys are 30 years, 25 years, including memory. So that's very important.
I have a question to what you said, where you mentioned a couple of companies consolidating, from 13 vendors or multiple vendors.
Philips.
Right. Shell, Philips. Right.
So Shell is multiple suppliers.
Right.
Now we've reached a level.
Oh, even Shell has now their.
So my point is that, do you see this trend happening across? So on a global level where companies are talking about training vendors, consolidating into one platform and using that.
Not so easily. As I said, the penetration, the learning process, outsourcing mentality is very limited. So it has to come from very much higher levels in the organization.
Right.
And unfortunately, very few CEOs give time to this topic.
Yeah.
So when I was talking about the CEO in Philips who introduced his philosophy of one Philips, he said there are too many things happening.
Right.
That actually triggered them to say, why do we have 20 products for this package and 20 of those, and somewhere in that was an LMS question.
So I'll share an example with a couple of our larger clients, the MNC clients in pharma. We show them dashboards of the results from the different trainings that we are implementing for them across. And they get wowed from it, right? When you look at their training partners and you say, why don't you give our platform to your training partner, at a very small cost or an incremental cost, they shy away from that sort of.
The vendors.
No, not the
Or the
vendor.
company.
Customer.
Because for them it's so they say we run either our own program and that's data which is very sensitive and we keep it within us, or we'll work with a third party, and then it's that third party sort of prerogative whether they want to use your platform, but we won't get into that because of regulations and all kinds of ethics. Now, how do we create a system where, because these guys are liking what they're seeing, the visualization is fantastic, helps them in their data-driven decisions. How do we create a system where they're actually using the platform and being able to sort of get everyone to
What's a
use
good example? Because this is a real problem.
Yeah.
It's a real problem.
No, but it's a very common thing. The point is the guy who's going to adopt
Bring stuff on your platform.
your stuff on this platform, correct? He's not doing it for one customer,
Right.
correct? Then he needs a stronger arrangement between the two of you.
But there are multiple of those third-party vendors, right? So how do we get? So
They're not multiple of. I don't think you can even count it. Even if you ask NIIT to give you how many learning platforms exist, it will run for for a couple of hours working that list.
So try and answer this question
Yeah.
in terms of any situation that finally filtered down.
So
to you.
we also come across this kind of situation specifically with pharma or the banking customers we work with. So going back to that block diagram that I had, so one of the things that has worked for us is, see, if you are having a conversation with the customer saying, hey, I have a platform, I'll give you that platform, it's a no. Immediately they shut the doors. But rather than saying that, we say that, hey, we have these capabilities which you may not have. We can bring and embed these capabilities or integrate these capabilities which enhance the overall learning experience for your learner. Then the conversation, I mean, it's a conversation opener. You could do that.
And then they may white label, which means you will not be visible. But then that is something, it's like every sound system has a Dolby, right?
Right.
So that Dolby, Dolby at least was smart enough to say you have to say you have a Dolby system.
Intelligence.
Right, or Intel Insight, and therefore they charge whatever. So there are multiple forces at work. In learning organizations, just to give you one more experience, most of the multinationals have multiple learning organizations.
Yeah.
It could be geography, it could be businesses, like take a pharma, right? It'll have multiple learning organizations because in some wisdom, they would have decided that a business needs to be complete by itself. It should not have to depend on a central entity. Some people may have a federated structure, saying yes, you have your independent, but on a few things we have a common standardization. Right? Exactly what it used to happen in information systems. That's how information systems also evolved. Over a period of time, people felt it is good to give independence, yet it's good to keep a central control because then there is mobility of expertise amongst other things. Mobility of data, mobility of expertise, fungibility of a good idea, pick up from. So implementing that in an organization by itself is setting up a new coalition government in the country. Really, I'm telling you.
Yeah, this is CIO.
Because
CIO
the guy
to
says,
CDO.
I am the king now, suddenly now I am a prince and there is another king, right? So you have to overcome many of this. That's why Raji said, you need a very strong-headed CEO who says, guys, this is priority, has to be done.
Yeah. And that
So
makes
just
sense.
outsourcing learning is a political decision.
Very, very important.
Whole internal learning department is what it is. It's an old outsourcing. But in outsourcing, there was a financial logic. It used to be the CFO. They could do it dispassionately. After the IT became more strategic, you only have CDOs. There's a battle between CIOs and CDOs.
CSO.
Security
No, security officer.
Also,
Chief
a
security
couple of
officer.
factors, especially in pharma. The generic factor, of course, was traditional learning was chalk and talk, or you put a talking head into a classroom. Right? So it didn't make sense for one person to travel across the globe and do it. And therefore, you had to be near where your employees were. So therefore, it was a distributed activity. Pharma, especially because many of them have grown, especially large companies, have grown through acquisition.
That's
There
the
was one company structure, you bought another company there and you built something kind of organically evolved to be that way. So they are actually more
Many of the other packages also same thing.
disaggregated than many other. The others are now starting to pull it back because it doesn't have to be a distributed sport. It can be with a virtual instructor, whoever is best available globally can be done. But I think things are evolving.
So now, one or two more questions.
Balaji, I have one question.
There was one more question he had.
First
one-
question.
So some of the stuff that we did, we do a lot of tracking in terms of the heat maps and all. So one thing we have learned is if you have a scrolling page with the given attention span of the learners, people don't actually scroll your page. Okay, so therefore try and keep all your content in just one frame. Beyond that, don't have that. So that's where we had to actually redo some of the way we were designing the experiences. Okay, but again, it's not one size fits all for all. It depends. The kind of skills that you have, the kind of audience that you have, it varies. So I mean, that's the response.
Yeah.
Yes.
So we are more like an old school system integrator. So because we use a lot of different tech, but we aren't a tech company to that extent. A lot of times we bring it all together in a kind of a dashboard, which is like very old school system integration, right? We build everything together. In your experience, which you all would have been doing, where is the right time to say, okay, I'm done enough of creating mini Frankenstein into one giant one. I will build my own Frankenstein now. Because we are at the stage where we use few pieces of tech, various AI assessments, various testing platforms, and we sort of aggregate all of that to the customer, give them one window, because they don't want 20 things to log in and log out. How do you think we should, like, I'm sure you guys would have gone that route as well, right? Where you have multiple systems that you're interacting with. Eventually you said, no, this is the way, we're going to only use our system and our system.
So no, actually we were slightly different. We were having our own systems because at those days there was no other system. Okay, we started much earlier. Probably we had the first education ERP, or even today we are the only one who probably have the full education ERP. However,
but we will integrate it with other ERPs.
So initially we built our own. Now we have actually started compartmentalizing it, and then started bringing in other systems that can do that job better than what we could do. Okay, and we have actually started focusing on, like I said, the core area differentiator. Ours is the learning methodology, the learning experience. That's what we're focusing on. Other stuff we continue to aggregate. Okay,
Main thing.
main thing.
Main thing question.
One question. So with Gen AI features, and especially the feature with which Uday sir had displayed, that was exceptional, right? So we've also spent a lot of time. Again, it's a much smaller team, so we're spending time figuring out what do we want to solve on priority, and we go case by case. Two questions here. One is, so there is a huge case of prompting here, right, where you continuously iterate. Now this is taken care of with context by the tech team itself, or is it more of the product team who is iterating on that? And the second part of it was, again, since it's a smaller team and there are multiple use cases, so just to give a small example, like we're just trying to do some AI generated qualifying calls to a few leads, right? And again, with limited bandwidth, we were able to test out a few platforms, a few APIs, retail APIs, encountered some issues, tested out a couple of more, and then it's taking more time to get there, right? So is there a way we can get in touch with your team who could probably share, because I'm sure they've done much broader research on what is the best solution for the best use case. So
Sure. We can definitely connect and discuss offline. But Gen AI is new. We are also learning. Okay, so I mean, whatever I say may not be the thing. I mean, tomorrow I'll do something different. But to answer your question on the prompting and the tech, see, the prompting is to the point where the desired output is needed from Gen AI. And that's done by the mentors and the coach that Uday was talking about in an earlier discussion. But now when it comes to actually providing an interface to the learner, that's when the tech team has to come in. So that's where the alignment happens. So when the tech team comes in, they actually, we have created a layer on top of prompt called, we call it prompt builder. Okay, where the prompt, which is text, we convert it into, in technical terms, it's a JSON or video or whatever it is. So we have created a layer on top of the base prompt, which is done by the art coaches, and then we integrate it with UI. That's how
so you give them a platform where they can.
Yes. We have actually given them a platform for them to actually do the prompting, experimenting. Yes. Right.
Any other question? Yeah.
See, majority of the time you will be dealing with the corporates, not the enterprise customers. the people sitting out over here, majority of the time deals with the most egotist brand called as education institutes, where they do say, I am different. You do have a standardized methodology, paper checking is a standardized methodology, okay? But still, they will say, I am different. And for that particular matter, they will try to push some of those particular features which really doesn't make any sense, ideally. But as a sec, the sales guy really does come and say, मेरा customer है, मुझे ये feature देना है, okay, and I really want to achieve my goals. Point number one. So in this particular case, typically what happens, you really need to extract your own code base, need to deploy it separately because it really doesn't fit into your entire cloud deployment set of things. So typically, I mean, how to deal with such set of customers, which are typically in a 100 installation, 5% are pretty much more given, and they are certainly the nuts who really do make you more and more really do go through those particular iterative channels again and again. And last but not least, they want the product economic.
Yeah, that's of course. And this is our secret sauce. You're asking me to share my secret sauce with you.
But this is a real problem which each one would really have to bet on, they would really be trying to solve. How to do it economically.
I can discuss further technically how we have solved it separately offline. But Raji said our businesses are different. We have two different organizations, and the customers who we work with, they use approximately 1/4 of those boxes that we have. So, and each customer wants one white label to some variations in that. So, with this approach, what we have done is we have created these Lego blocks. We actually assemble those Lego blocks and create a unique solution for our customer. What we have done is we have created an architecture where the base code is single code base. On top of it, we make those variations so that you can actually give the customer what they want.
Go to that Lego box, that component, and they will say, I want to change here, which really doesn't fit into overall architecture.
Then it's not a technical decision, it's more a business decision. Do you, like Vijay said, do you really want to make it a common feature which actually you can take it to other customers? Then you have to take that call.
Yeah, majority of the time we really have to accommodate to satisfy both the parties. The sales guy and then as really sir said, it will be a 5x in terms of implementing or getting it implemented.
Sure.
You can borrow an example from SAP R3 when they came 90s. So we were implementing. So they brought the system from Germany. A lot of these local taxes and all, they were not good. So they were all uniqueness of Indian tax system. They started adopting this and they came to a particular level. So maybe in your system you will have to see whether you are able to cater to all the requirements of the customer, which typically in that business will be needing. Once you do that, then you can refuse. You can say, if most of the companies are able to do with this, then you should be able to fit it. And that's the way you should go. Otherwise, if you start too much customization, the amount of cost you will be incurring on that will not be adequate and you won't get the return.
Right. So typically,
but first you have to examine whether your system itself is capable of delivering the values which that particular industry needs.
Absolutely. So typically, we always do tell our prospect that this is a collective wisdom. Okay, this is the product, and it is really been a collective wisdom. Whatever those particular set of features you will be able to see, it is really been the best set of practices. A great name to that. But still, beyond that, because we really have built triple Excel, and then we do chop it to M, X, whatever L, the size we really typically need. But that triple Excel, someone really want either a square written on that, or maybe a TM written on that, and that is where it really does create a problem. Okay, in terms of, and last question, do you also do on-prem or it is always SaaS?
Now always. We stopped on-prem in 2010. We are all only cloud.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Let's all have a low round of applause.